Knockback, the retro and nostalgia podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Knockback. I haven't said that in a while. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by my brother. He isn't so lost, but he has a legacy. We will leave one day. Not too soon. Not too soon. Dagan Moriarty. Dagan, welcome to the show. How are you today, my friend?
Thank you for not reversing it. I could be, because I really am lost, but not a legacy. But you were being kind. You said,
right.
Why does it feel like it's been 3 years since we've done Knockback?
It has been a while.
It really hasn't been that long.
Yeah, it's been a while. I mean, let me look at YouTube. It would be the easiest way for us to see it, I guess, because it has the little Knockback.
You know what? Since the inception of Knockback, while you look, this might be the longest that you and I haven't record. Well, not really, though, because in the beginning we would record in batches.
That's true. Yeah. So it hasn't even been that. You're right. It's just because you did 2 episodes with PJ.
Yeah.
And we did kind of an interstitial one in between with like about our parents. We haven't done a one about, and then we didn't even do one 2 weeks ago. We did a Sacred Symbols Plus episode instead because I needed to explain it to everyone that maybe doesn't know. I was playing Final Fantasy VII Remake kind of in preparation for Rebirth, but also because Dagan and I were going to do it together. Yes. On Knockback. I put in all of this work into it, and I wanted to see it anyway, but then Dagan got a job and really had no longer had time to do it. And so I had to segue that into a Sacred Symbols Plus episode for my own sanity, or I would have been like, this was a complete waste of my time. Because it really wasn't a waste of my time. I just took copious notes while I was playing.
Yeah.
So otherwise I just would have played it.
And it's topical. It was topical, so it was really perfect for that anyway. So it worked out.
Yeah, it was great. And I'm happy I replayed it. It's an amazing game. Rebirth is even better in most ways. But so maybe we'll get to that one day. I have no idea. But we haven't done is Starship Troopers was the last time we really covered something. And that was really an ode to Helldivers. So that must have been in February, March, something like that.
Forgot about that.
So today I thought we would come together because we were saying, like, how do we come back? Like, Knockback's kind of in a little bit of a quiet period. How do we come back with a raging storm? And I was like, we should do the Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. A lot of people have been upset at me that I haven't played this. I'll explain why I hadn't played it until now. But when we really began Knockback, I kind of just was waiting to play it for Knockback. So, and I knew we had to get through all the Uncharted games first, which we did. Uncharted trilogy plus Uncharted 4. So we were finally here. So it makes sense. The one problem is that it's probably some people are I haven't looked, but I've been playing it the last couple of days. So some people are going to know that this is coming if they're clever, but most people are not clever. And by that, I mean, they don't look at my trophy. So why would they see it? So we will get into that momentarily, of course. But how is everything else going, Dig? I mean, how's life?
Spoilers. Yeah, no, everything's good, man. Everything's it's nice to get back into playing a game because the bandwidth is condensed now with the job and the commute and everything. But you know what's been going on, man? I've been meaning to tell you this on the side anyway, but I might as well tell you now. This phenomenon is going on in my neighborhood, which is not only a phenomenon in itself, but it's a phenomenon how I never knew this was a thing before. So let me explain real quick. We're coming back from, I guess, last weekend. We're coming back from something, the family. Like, I think we were at the dinner for Helene's birthday. Come back early. Sun's still out. The sun hasn't set. It's still light outside. Look on the front. Everybody goes in the house. I'm bringing up the rear, right? I look on my neighbor's front lawn, just in my eye line. There's a baby deer just laying in the middle of their front lawn, just sitting there. I'm like, what the fuck? At first, I thought it was a fox. It just had his little head. It was laying down, but it's had his little head with his big ears perked up. What the hell's going on?
And then the Long Islander, and you came out real quick, and you went and got a rifle and shot it. Anyway, go ahead.
I'm immediately thinking Bambi, and then I'm thinking that's a pretty big. It was big, like it was the size of like a normal size cat. It wasn't super tiny, right? So I'm thinking, I don't know why, but my first thing was like, what happened? Did like a hawk or an owl like try to pick it up and just drop it there, like deposit it? Because it was in like this really conspicuous spot. It wasn't hiding, obviously, or anything. But it also wasn't moving. But it also wasn't sleeping, and it wasn't dead. So it was really strange. So long or short of it is, call the family out. They're all freaking out. They're gathering around it with their cell phones, taking pictures. It's so cute, so cute. Well, Helene, everybody goes inside. Helene researches it. This is a thing that happens in the spring. The mom deer will just in the middle of the night, I guess if you're in an area rural enough, will just go and deliver the baby deer wherever it has it. You know, it's in labor, so it doesn't have a strategic location. It's not going to the hospital, right? So I guess it has the deer, it has the baby, it delivers the baby wherever it is, and then the mom goes off to feed and rest and then comes back for the baby. I guess the thing is under the cover of night. Also, the baby, having just been born, needs to rest, apparently. And that's what it's doing there. You're not supposed to meddle with this thing in any way. So it turns out, Helene jumps on Facebook. All the neighbors on the cul-de-sac already know this and are letting nature play out. Well, we're on the front lawn meddling with the shit out of this thing until it just gets up. It like whinnies, like gets up. This is after, by the way, I shouldn't out him, but this is after Graydon touches its ear. You're not supposed to touch it. Okay. It gets up and starts walking. Now it looks like Bambi. It's got these long spider legs that it really can't use yet. And it tries to run across the front lawn, across the cul-de-sac, onto my other neighbor's front lawn and into the yard. But it looks like it's walking for the first time because we made it do that.
Interesting.
So now we're super worried that the mom's not going to find it. It's going to come back at night. It's not going to know where it is. The neighbors are going to see. Now we're outed as these ignoramuses who meddled with nature.
Oh, whatever, dude. Yeah.
Dude, but here's the thing.
Don't they understand property? They're on your property. Yeah.
Well, here's the question. Why doesn't the mom deer try to have the baby where it's going to bed down and eat rather than go have it on the middle of somebody's driveway and then come back for it's asinine, right? From the deer's perspective. But also, my neighbors, we've been here for 12 years. And now also where we live, where you and I grew up, where our parents, especially where our parents moved in 87, 88, very rural, nothing but deer and woods as far as the eye could see. Why have I never heard of this? Because you drive around my neighborhood, if you're looking for it right now, there's going to be a baby deer somewhere in somebody's yard. I'm not saying there's one all over the place, but if I go in the two neighborhoods, drive around looking for a deer, I'm going to see one on somebody's, in some weird location. Why have I never heard of this before? So strange.
I really think a lot of it has to do, it's funny, man, because some people talk about, people that aren't from certain areas talk about deer very lovingly, Oh, the lovely deer, and I have no problem with deer really. But like I was saying, and I must have remarked about this before, Long Island, and you've noted, is so overrun with deer that upstate hunters, so New York's upstate, where like the more rural people live, are invited to come to Long Island every year and kill 3,000 of them.
Is that right?
Yeah. And
that's the number?
That's the number that they're trying to hit every year. And like you can just come down and fuck them up. And we love it because they're just everywhere. And it's funny, I never grew up really appreciating or liking deer because dad hated them. Like everyone hated them. Oh, I hit a fucking deer on the street. There's a deer carcass in the middle of the road. Like you can't escape it. Oh shit, the deer ran. In New England, it's moose and it's much more serious.
That's nuts.
Here, like up when I lived in Maine, you don't fuck with moose.
No. God.
Deer. Now, when I worked at the Post-Morrow Foundation, which is a land trust on Long Island, I had a job there for the summer. That my friend Mike Pope's mom, one of my best friends' childhood, his mom is the secretary and like administrative person at this place. It's a very small land trust, she's the only full-time employee, I think. That and the person who does the landscaping, who I worked for, Kenny, who passed away actually. But I used to just dick around. Basically, it was awesome, and just go in the woods and like pick things up and mow lawns, and it was a fucking great job, dude. It was like $9 or $10 an hour. I was 19 years old. I worked from 8 a.m. to noon.
It's a life. That's the life.
I used to just drive in with her because they lived across the street with me. And then she would always go home for lunch and she would drive me home. And then I would just go and get stoned or whatever and spend all the money I made. I remember it must have been $36 every day that I made. And then I would just go buy like, an eighth or whatever.
Spend half of it. I see what you mean.
But, so I did encounter a deer once in that situation in the woods when I was like on one of the trails where the deer kind of was getting aggressive, and I read about it where like they will fuck with you if you like get too close to, and I must have not realized like
to their babies and stuff.
Yeah, I must have been in some proximity in some weird way or whatever. So yeah, I have no love for deer. I mean, could give a fuck about them really.
They're a little creepy. They're like a much more tame version of like a shark in that they feel like they're robots. They feel like they're programmed to do certain things, and their capacity for intelligence seems very limited to just survival, you know? And the thing is they encroach because they're misplaced, right? They have really nowhere to go because of all the development. Even in an area like this that's pretty rural, they're still kind of triangulated in certain strategic spots in between homes, but they come out and they eat your flowers and they eat your shrubs.
Right.
They don't know, you know, they just know like this is good. This tastes good. This is good eating, you know, that type of thing. But yeah, so strange, man. Helene was mortified that entire day. Like, oh my God, like the neighbors are going to think. But I'm thinking like, why even take Brookhaven and where we grew up even out of the equation? We've been here for almost 13 years. What happened the first 12 springs that this was never a thing?
I don't know.
I feel, you know what I told the kids? I said, this is the deer equivalent of the human leaving the baby at the firehouse. They don't want it. They're dumping it off.
Right. Safe drop off or whatever. They have, I don't know if it's everywhere. I've only noticed it in Santa Monica, but they had like actual signs outside the, with like safe drop off with like a baby logo on it. I'm like, what is this?
Holy shit.
Yeah.
That was like a sanctioned thing.
Yeah. Like I remember specifically there's a firehouse. People might know it in Santa Monica. Let me think, at like Colorado and 7th maybe. And there's like a Vaughn's there and everything like that. And then, near, like adjacent to it was a firehouse, and there was a sign like at the front door where I guess the people would go in and out, not like where the trucks go in and out. And it said like safe drop off or something with like a baby thing on it. Yeah.
We got to ask.
I remember that. Yeah.
Has he ever experienced that? Because for some reason it was the fire. And why was it the firehouse? Because those guys are trained medically, but they're not.
I think it's
police.
Like my honest read on it is that it is an official governmental body that cannot arrest you.
Right. That's right. It's not the police station. Yeah,
that's kind of the way I felt about it. It's like you're not going to drop it off to the cops. You're going to drop it off to the firemen that like can't really do anything with you. And at least in New York City, they don't even really like each other. So it's really like, at least they didn't. I don't know if they do now. Maybe after 9/11 that changed. I have no idea.
There's a rivalry.
Yeah. I love watching sometimes I watch or catch up with the firemen playing the policemen in hockey. That's like a really serious thing. They have like really good hockey teams, and they play at like Nassau Coliseum and MSG.
I remember going to those.
Yeah.
Growing up.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. That was a big thing.
So yeah, it would be interesting to know if Dad had any experiences with that. Unfortunately, when I was at the firehouse, I never experienced that with Dad when he would bring me to fires. So. All right.
Kyle, you know what was really fun? Did you ever do this with Dad? Yearly, they would go somewhere upstate outside of New Paltz or something, and they would do cop firefighter paintball. We would get.
Oh yeah, you did that with him, didn't you?
Twice. We got eviscerated fucking twice.
Oh, I bet.
It's cops versus firefighters with guns. It's not even fair.
Where Dad was
ridiculous.
Doing, I'm surprised they didn't give Dad like a G.I. Joe leg pistol for when he was working in East New York. Because Dad used to say they used to like attack them and shit like that. And like
he never carried a gun.
Yeah. Dad does not. Dad doesn't. I think Dad has guns now, but I don't think Dad. In fact, he definitely does. But he because I asked him about some. I like guns too, and I was curious like what he had, and if I was like, what would you recommend for this, and this? And he was like, you should get like a shotgun for like home protection or whatever. And I'm like, dude, I'd probably rip my own shoulder off. Shooting. I've shot shotguns. Actually, I've said before, shotgun was the first gun I ever shot. Strangely enough, when I was like a kid, they would take your arm off, dude. You have to. I remember. It's so funny because I remember. God, who was it? You know when you take your G.I. Joe guns and you tuck them under and they look cool, like they're carrying. But that's not how anyone shoots. You know, they would shoot with the thing but it didn't look cool for the figure, so you would tuck it under. Like that, like they were running or. Spraying and praying or whatever. And then I went to shoot a gun like that when I was a kid. And they're like, dude, you don't fucking shoot,
They stopped you before you did it.
Yeah, this was Uncle Hal.
Oh, you're kidding me.
And who RIP in peace, Uncle Hal. And Yeah, he was the first one that, and I went skeet shooting with them upstate. And then later, and I've told Michael, like, the craziest thing you can do really with guns is go to Nevada and you can just do whatever you want. Like if you leave Las Vegas, you can go to like these gun ranges and just shoot like fucking RPGs and like
anything
whatever
you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so awesome. I love that. I love gun culture. I think it's awesome. I'm not really a huge part of it. Everyone should be packing to protect themselves, in my opinion. But I don't have like a fucking arsenal of guns. But
Right.
it would be... But I love that that's like such a uniquely American thing. And that people, speaking of Uncharted, because there's so many guns in it, I love that it like scares the shit out of people. Like it's the fucking... I picture like Europeans thinking about the United States and they think it's like the Wild West. It's like Westworld when they get off the plane, you know? And I'm like, just a little bit. But not really. Depends on where you go. Baltimore? Chicago? Gary, Indiana. All right.
They weren't expecting that. The one listener in Gary was like, really? I thought you were going...
They don't have electricity in Gary. No one's listening to the show. All right. Dag, it's time to talk about Uncharted: The Lost Legacy.
Let's jump in.
This is not the last Uncharted game for you to play because you have not played Golden Abyss.
No.
Although I don't know how you're going to play it, and I'm quite flummoxed that 12 years later they have not ported it off of the Vita. It's a little strange.
That's not available?
No,
anywhere?
not nowhere.
Really?
Just on the Vita.
Really?
And it's a Vita launch game, and it's awesome. It's actually a really great game. It's made by Bend, the guys that did 20. It's 2011 in Japan, 2012 in the US. It was actually, it's funny, man. It was one of those interesting examples of the Japanese, because here's a little aside. We had Japanese Vitas. Sony didn't like this because we had access. They couldn't stop us, but we just imported everything. We spent thousands of dollars and imported everything. I remember going on PlayAsia and doing all the pre-orders. And the launch games that would come out in February were out in early December in Japan, including Uncharted, totally localized. And I remember we had a conversation with them, like they were asking us not to review it.
Oh, wow.
Not because they were afraid it was bad, but because they wanted the pop of the review when the game came out. In fact, it's quite good. So I always remembered that about that era. But that Uncharted game, Golden Abyss by Bend, they did Siphon Filter and Days Gone.
Right.
Love
Siphon.
It's a great game written by my friend John Garvin in collaboration with Amy Hennig. Now, the interesting thing about this Uncharted Lost Legacy game is a few things. It's a really unique product in that it's a pretty lengthy expansion. It's not really DLC. In fact, it's literally not DLC because it is a standalone game. I say that because it's differentiated from what we would understand as Naughty Dog's other other downloadable content and Left Behind, which was the follow-up to 2013's The Last of Us, which came out in 2014. That was like probably less than 2 hours or about 2 hours long. And apparently that's what they kind of intended with this originally, but it just kind of got out of scope. It's not very big. I beat it in basically one day.
Okay. How many hours for you?
I think it was like 8 hours or something like that for me. And I did some of the side quests. Like I look for side stuff. Like I look for the treasures.
You did?
I didn't get them all, but I mean, I dick around and look. It's not immersion breaking to me because that's something that they would do. I think is like look around and try to. So it doesn't feel like you're just looking for stupid collectibles or whatever.
I like that. I like that.
So I did that, and then I did also like what I would consider the one major side quest in the game, which is getting that bracelet. If you did you do that for the? And it helps you.
I started it and then got nervous I wasn't going to finish.
Yeah. It was cool because it allowed you to kind of explore that one open area. So I did those things. So you could probably beat it in like 6 hours or even less. I actually looked up videos because I wanted to watch a specific cutscene again. And there's 4.5 hour playthroughs of it, like where people know what they're doing.
I can see that.
Like, no commentary kind of runs or whatever. So yeah, it's pretty short. It's manageable. It came out in the late summer of 2017. Now, Dig, I'm curious what you think of it, but I have to say this because there's a little bit of a history or lack thereof with me in this game. It was a very conspicuous thing that I never played this because I'm obviously very enmeshed in first party and second party games for PlayStation. And the only ones I really skip are ones I know I'm not going to like or that I really don't care about. So recent ones on PS5 would be like Demon Souls Remake. I just didn't even bother with that. Destruction All-Stars, didn't give a fuck about that. Really great prolific games like Gran Turismo. I haven't played a Gran Turismo game since I used to have to go preview them and they would make fun of me. Because I didn't know how to drive. I remember the female producer of Gran Turismo, I can't remember her name, Japanese woman, was like laughing at me as I was playing the game. It was like, it must have been Gran Turismo like 5 or something.
Were you playing automatic or were you playing standard?
I was playing however they gave me the controller, and I was just riding like the wall around it because I wanted to play like Need for Speed or something, and like you can't.
Right.
I've had quite a few experiences like that where they're like, "What Bloodborne?" It's the same woman that helped produce that on the Sony side. She had a funny. I can't remember her name. She was really sweet, but they watched me play Bloodborne and they're like, "Jesus Christ, dude!" Like
that's funny.
Pretty bad. I'm like, yeah, I got it. What's fascinating about this product to me? So, all right. So let me back up. It comes out August 2017. Now, people will remember that I left Kind of Funny in March of 2017, and then I didn't play any video games for a while. Now, this is a huge part of the lore. You can go look at my trophies, actually, and you'll see that everything just drops off for like months. And then I start creeping back. I creep back with weird games, too. Like Transistor was one of them. Which is a really great game, actually.
Love that game.
Yeah, you're a Supergiant fan, aren't you? You like Supergiant?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, Transistor was dope. And then I played Final Fantasy VII, the original one. And then Bloodborne. And I was like rolling back. And so this game came out in there and I just missed it. And then I just never played it. And I really don't know why. But then when we started Knockback the next year, which wasn't too far, we started Knockback like months after this came out, actually.
Yeah.
I kind of just was like, we'll get to this and it would be stupid for me to play this now. I do try to manage my time somewhat well, although I'm not always good at it. And so that was really the reason. And then it just kind of fell to the background because we had to get through all the Uncharted games. Then we got through the Uncharted trilogy. Then we got to Uncharted 4. So here we are. And what I'm so surprised about this, just from my perspective, is it's really good. The ending is sublime. And I want to talk about that. Like the end sequence is amazing.
So cool.
Absolutely one of the most amazing things I've probably ever seen in video games. They made this game in like a year. And what I'd really like to know is from stem to stern, by the way, like the game Uncharted 4 had come out and then they started working on this, as I understand it. So
nuts.
They wrote it and got it all together. It was obviously a spin-off team because The Last of Us Part 2 was really heavily in development at that point. And it's amazing that they made it so quickly and that it's not 2 hours long. That it actually now there's all sorts of ways. I can see all the seams of this game. It is interesting and it's fun. There's a huge open area. There's tons of backtracking. There are obviously, I think, more per capita puzzles in this game than there would be in an Uncharted game, considering how much time you spend with it. So by full Uncharted standards, it wouldn't be. But there are some puzzles where it's like, oh, like this could take you a half an hour.
For sure.
And there was one puzzle, that shadow puzzle in particular, where I'm like, I don't think so. And I just went and looked up immediately saw it and like, no.
That one was daunting.
Yeah. Where I'm like, I'm not doing this. So
it wasn't as daunting as you think it's going to be, but it was one of those things where do I cheat? Yeah, I didn't, but even me, I was just like, I don't know.
It's funny because the platform ones where you jump on the platforms in certain orders, I figured that wasn't hard and I figured that out by myself. But yeah, because I was like, no, I could do this. And then, but I saw that one. I literally would just grab my laptop. I'm like, I'm not even touching anything, not even
because it was
with
the
this.
two you had to account for both mosaic, both murals or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
All right. So Dave, take it away. What did you think of Uncharted: The Lost Legacy? Let's get into it.
I mean, I love the added backstory, which I didn't know that this game was sort of caught in that 2017 Bermuda Triangle for you. That's really neat. I love that. People are going to love that because you're experiencing a game with me for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Not that we haven't done that before, but for the first time, certainly with the Uncharted franchise.
Yeah, I mean, it's and it's great too. Just that it's I am seeing it for the first time, and it was impactful and interesting. And it wasn't really, not that there's much to spoil, I guess, but the only thing I knew about it was that it was about Chloe and Nadine. So otherwise, I had no idea what it was really about. So for somehow I avoided it all this time, 7 years.
See, that's cool. So you were completely unspoiled. I was too. And what you say is interesting too, because I'm going in thinking I know it's technically sort of considered an expansion to Uncharted 4. So that's one of the things I was wondering going in. Is this going to be sort of like a really kind of boiled down, diluted, much shorter experience? Because with Uncharted, you guys know how much I love the franchise. I want a full-fledged offering. And this does really kind of feel a lot, not just in terms of length, but a lot of in the substance, like Colin said already. Feels like a mainline or mainliney Uncharted game, which I was pleasantly surprised about. Probably took me about, I guess, 9 hours, but I really meandered. I did start that bracelet quest, which I was a little put off in terms of time because, again, my bandwidth is limited, so I wanted to make sure I got it done. I finished it very early this morning, so I was cutting it close. But it's really nice to be that fresh with it. You know what I mean? Because it's all on the top of the dome still. You know, shades of dementia. We don't have to worry about that.
Oh my God, tell me about it.
You know what I mean? Oh my God, you know how it is. But dude, I mean, for me, where I start with this is I loved it. Spoilers, right? But one of my most cherished, I don't want to say accomplishments, but one of my proudest video gaming feats for Knockback anyway, specifically, was playing through all the mainline Uncharted games, the 4 of them. Not only because I love them, but I do consider, you and I talk about this from time to time, I consider a video game on the same sort of level as reading a great novel, right? Or taking in a great film. You're richer for having experienced that thing, for having spent time with that thing. Because it's just an awesome experience, you know? And also I think when you're talking pop culture and you kind of do that as part of your living and stuff like that, like you have to have these things in your vocabulary because they're legendary, you know? So when you came up with this idea to go back to Uncharted, realizing I haven't played a lot of these side things or these other expansions and other things, it's like, oh man, I'm happy to get back into that world. And I just really fell in love with it. I heard I was largely unspoiled. Like I didn't know who popped up later on. We'll get into all that. But I had heard from time to time with this one of like, it's Uncharted. It's not breaking the mold. Like it's if you're going and expecting something different, don't. But for me, it's like, yeah, but why would you break the mold of Uncharted? It's fucking Uncharted. Like, give me more Uncharted. And this really does that with a few added things, and including the characters you play as, right? Your protagonists. But that's why I loved it. You know, it just felt like the first 4 Uncharted offerings, very faithful. Love returning to these characters, like getting these other characters more fleshed out. It's very reverent of the franchise in terms of lore and connectivity. And I just had a great time. I really had an amazing time. To hear that they made this in a year is staggering to me. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, when you consider the release of Uncharted 4 and then when this came out, and then you kind of back up and look at the production timeline of when it must have been content complete. Like even just doing motion capture and performance capture, getting all of that written, getting all of that. That's why there's so much of Uncharted 4 in this game, and you can just see it. But you have to kind of forgive them for it because, yeah, you're sliding around a lot. You're hook shotting everywhere, yes. Like doing that. You're in the car a lot. You know, they're going to. I'm sure it would be fascinating. People have probably done it to see like what assets were reused and if you can kind of graft parts of the original game onto this and how they did it. It reminds me a little bit of the story about Far Cry Primal, which was a really great game. It's the Stone Age Far Cry game, and it's really dope. But someone had figured out that it's built on the topography of Fallout 4. So though the games look totally different, if you removed all of the vegetation and all the houses or whatever, it's the same map, just with different things on it. And I thought that because they already kind of had tested that and falling through the environments and all the things that make it easier to kind of build off of a foundation. So I'm sure they did that here too.
Yeah, shortcuts and reuse, man. I did have a couple. I don't know if you had the same thing. I had a couple of very faint, not very deliberate, but very faint deja vu moments with the level design. I felt like it was a reskinned version of I have been here before. Mm-hmm. I can't tell you which game. I can't even tell you which thing. There were very faint things, but to even know though, I mean, those things had to exist, but I just think of the 98% of the time that I wasn't thinking that. That's an incredible accomplishment because you have to have that reuse and that sort of system built in for getting something done quickly, and to be able to mask that much of it is incredible. You know, but I definitely had that recall of like, all right, this feels, whether it was a temple or even a jungle area, it's like something feels familiar here. But did you have that sensation?
Yeah, definitely.
As well?
Definitely. Okay. And that's what I was curious about. I'm sure, again, there are analyses of these. I'm sure you are somewhere where you have been before. I mean, it's just by the nature of the game and how quickly it was made. And again, it's interesting to see studios and publishers take risks or make attempts at doing things judiciously which at that time was important, but at this time is even more important. I mean, when you consider when that entered development and how quickly they got it out, that I don't even know if that would be possible on PS5. It is a really beautiful game, though. There are moments of true scenic beauty that really show you how much better Naughty Dog is at this than a lot of other, or basically any other studio in a lot of different ways. But I also feel like, I don't know, there's a lot to say. I'm looking at my notes here. What did you think about the setting of India? I do think the one thing I was asking myself about this game, Dig, was, is it the best way to present Uncharted? Because it was really fun and I really liked it. But I will say that the way people talked about it made it seem like it was going to be this amazing mainline style Uncharted. And it's not. It's not anywhere near as good as the trilogy or Uncharted 4, in my opinion. The major reason for that is not the moment by moment gameplay or the dialogue. Like, everything's as it should be. It's that Uncharted needs more room to breathe than this. And it needs some sort of globe-trotting Indiana Jones style map, place to place thing. And they just don't get a chance to do that. So it is a cool encapsulated game that has smaller moments, but it's about a couple of characters that I don't really care about. I mean, especially Nadine. I don't care about Nadine at all.
Oh, that's interesting.
Chloe's been with us a lot longer, and I do care much more about Chloe. Nadine, I don't really care at all about.
I kind of felt the same way, I have to say.
So it's like, whatever, dude. I don't know. I barely know you. I know Cutter better than I know you. You know, like,
yeah.
To be perfectly honest, it would have been more meaningful for him to be in the game. At least we know him better. So there is that, and then there's the lack of kind of diversity in terms of what you're doing and where you're going. There's an arc, obviously, in every one of the games, but you usually go to multiple places. Again, like Indiana Jones, this is very Indian. It's cool. I think that's really neat, but it does miss that dynamism because the game can't be long enough. So it's almost a shame that they didn't save this stuff for a longer, a longer game where they really could have gotten into it, especially because I realize how little I know about India, I know little about India, and I know nothing about Indian, like, folklore.
Hinduism.
Yeah, like I kind of don't care either. Like, it's so,
that's interesting,
because it's like, how am I supposed to know and remember all of this? It's so seriously, it's like, I don't know what you're saying. I can't even begin to care about this. I barely know my own religious background, you know, and the words are too long and all that. But it does remind me that there's like this whole richness of culture that I literally don't know anything about, even geopolitically. I have to be honest with you, and I'm fucking embarrassed by this, but I didn't realize until recently, over the last few years, that Bangladesh, for instance, was like a separatist Indian, like there was like a war over that. And that
I didn't know that.
And that Pakistan also comes off of India, which I did know because they hate each other.
Right.
But I didn't realize kind of how that all went down. And just, it's kind of like the subcontinent is just this interesting place where I'm like, I don't know very much about you. You know,
no.
So
people may be surprised to hear that from you. They will not be surprised to hear that from me. I'm the same. I find Hinduism fascinating, and especially the imagery. Man, it's some of the most compelling, beautiful imagery and stories, and you get into the deities and the folklore. And I started to go down a rabbit hole early this morning when I finished the game for a couple of hours. And that's the same sensation I got. I was like, I know so little about this from the jump that I can't possibly go into this now. Just to understand the context of the game, because they were very reverent in their research and everything. Apparently, to a certain percentage, a lot of this stuff is actual.
Yeah, and that's all Uncharted games, you know. That's Amy Hennig's legacy, I think, that they continued. And
I kind of love that. You know what I mean? But that was the thing of like, I got the same thing from this in that it's an interesting take what you say about saving this for like an Uncharted 5, for example, because that dynamic sensibility, the variety of set piece locations and adventures is what's missing. You're all in one place. It's beautiful. It's picturesque, it's breathtaking, but it's very staid in that, you're in one. It feels very samey because you're in the jungly type of atmosphere environment that you would expect from an Uncharted game, but it stays there. But you know what? The other thing that I realized, Kyle, you're in these temples and these ancient places, and you have, the relics and all of these things, the ancient contraptions and all of this stuff. But there is no peril. There's a real lack of peril. It's not like what they did with the Aztec temples where these places are out to get you. They don't want you in there. You know what I mean? The only danger really coming for our protagonists is from who they're fighting against or who they're racing against. The place is very welcoming and friendly. Like they're not, there's no darts coming out of the ceiling and traps and pratfalls coming out of the floor. You know what I mean? The only danger is that these places are crumbling, ancient and crumbling. They're deteriorating. So that was the other thing that I realized in that, and again, that might be tied into, the nature of these ancient places of Hindu worship and India specifically and all those kind of things. But that felt different than other Uncharted games where it was like you didn't feel worried going into a temple or going into a building or going into a new structure because it was all like it seemed fine. It was we grew up with Indiana Jones. Man, when you're going after the ancient artifact, you better fucking watch yourself. You know what I mean? There's going to be poison darts and metallic spears coming out of the walls, and there was none of that in this game. Which again, maybe that makes for a refreshing Uncharted experience, or maybe it's a letdown because it's a little less exciting. I'm not sure about that.
There's like dialogue about it, even I think, in the sense that, well, it speaks to the normal level of danger anyway, the cadence of danger, where Nadine keeps asking Chloe about like, are things dangerous or is this safe to do? And she eventually says like, you should just assume it's not safe or whatever to do these kinds of things, which is funny. I don't know if that was kind of a tacit acknowledgement of some of these things, but yeah, it just, I think just by nature of how quickly it just had to have been set piece gunplay, some implementation of lots of platforming. I mean, those things could be kind of grafted onto the new game or whatever. I think the more meaningful moments that would have like traps and all of these kind of almost like more modern Tomb Raider stuff, I think would just sort of required too much, and they just didn't have time to do those very complicated dungeons and all of those things that they would have otherwise done. I think the bigger thing to me that bothered me though was, I think that it showed me that Uncharted needs to be long and not like huge, but 15 hours or so, like twice as long as this, I think would have been good. But so
I would have loved that.
So I do think that even though I really loved it, I think it's probably the weakest Uncharted product overall because it just doesn't have the level of variety. It doesn't have the real character. And it's about, again, Chloe I like a lot, but again, Nadine, character. I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We'll get into the characters. I mean, I love you bringing up Tomb Raider because I thought maybe 2 or 3 hours in, I was like, give me Chloe over Lara Croft any day of the week. I love this character. She becomes like a very, very appealing, very charismatic. She really becomes like the female Nathan Drake in some way in this game.
Definitely.
Like, oh shit. She stands up.
Yeah, she does. And it's cool. She looks older.
Yeah.
Like her hair is different.
Yes.
Her face is different a little bit. It's cool.
Familiar, but definitely aged a little bit, which I think was intentional in the design, right?
Oh, certainly.
Making her a little more mature. Yeah. She's not the femme fatale. She's not the wild card now. She's more substantive, and she's got a backstory and some texture now with her archaeologist dad. She really echoes Nathan in a lot of ways. She's got the archaeologist parent, right? And it just gives you more of her. She was like the fast talking, like dangerous girl. She's the other love interest, kind of the bad girl, the getaway driver, the selfish thief type thing. And this gives her like a lot more character, which I was surprised about. And I know a lot of it is about the Chloe Nadine team up. And I always call it that Bert Ernie dynamic, where you have those two distinctive personalities. And how are these two ever going to get along? Let alone become, loyal friends, and they do, and that they overcome, against all odds and everything. So I know it was about the duo, but she is so much, I agree, Chloe is so much more likable than Nadine. She kind of leaves Nadine in the dust a little bit, that performance just really like, if you're going to leave Nate Drake out of the game, got to have that protagonist that could kind of work up to the same level. And she really does, man. I would love another game with her. In fact,
yeah.
As her, being center stage, I think it would be amazing.
Yeah, I think we know what we're going to get next. But what I wonder is, although it's taken so long, people are skeptical that it's happening. I'm so confident that the Cassie Drake Uncharted game is happening. Like I just totally believe it. So I think that we'll know about that soon, but we'll see. I have no information on that in particular, but yeah, there is a rotisserie of characters in Uncharted that I think do occupy different echelons of quality and like importance, and I do think that this game, and again, I really loved it. I thought it was really fun, and I loved playing it. The gunplay is so fun. The ending is, like I said, phenomenal. I really want to talk about it because I was like so impressed with the ending. I was like, this is just crazy how good this is. And all of this is true, but I feel like Drake is really important to it. It makes me wonder about how it can work without him, and why I feel like he probably would be a somewhat important player in the next game, even though you probably won't play as him or whatever, that he'll appear and like an older Drake.
I think so. I hope so.
We'll see though. And how important the interplay is with him and Sully. I love Sully. It's arguably my favorite character in the games. But it's funny. I was wondering who they were going to. So it was obvious that a third character was going to show up at some point. I knew it wasn't going to be Nathan Drake because I just feel like that would have been really immersion breaking and unnecessary and kind of stealing the thunder from Chloe and Nadine. So I knew it wasn't going to be him. I knew it wouldn't obviously be Elena. I think almost anyone else was on the table, and I was like, maybe it's Cutter because Cutter has a relationship with Chloe. But
yeah,
then I was pretty sure it was going to be Sully, and I thought that would have been pretty strong. For some reason, I never even considered Sam, and then he shows up as well. So it's very focused on it. It is very spun off of Uncharted 4, which again is totally fine. But unlike Golden Abyss, which is a prequel, this is obviously a sequel. So this is the newest Uncharted we've gotten in some ways, which is other than the flash forwards, I guess, at the end of Uncharted 4, which would be beyond this, I think, in the timeline.
Yeah,
so
it would have to be, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right.
So what did you think about Sam kind of coming in here, played by Troy Baker, and bring a little masculine male energy to this very feminine Uncharted game?
I gotta tell you, again, going in unspoiled, at certain point, of course, you're thinking Nathan Drake, you're thinking Sully, right? From the start. But I thought, like, are they even going to tie the other characters in beyond mentions and conversations? And it is weird that the Sam Drake thing is kind of unexpected, like a little misdirection, a little subverting expectations. Uncharted does that. This game does that in a lot of ways very successfully. It's very well done, very thoughtfully done. And yeah, I didn't see Sam coming. And they don't even mention Nathan until maybe 2 or 3 hours in. They don't even, there's no mention of the character to my best recollection. So I think I was expecting Sully. I was hoping, I think I read that the creators said they did consider having Nate in there, you know, as like this playable 3/4 of the way in cameo thing, but they might have used the word superfluous, which I agree with. You got to see if you could stand Uncharted up without Nathan. You know what I mean? Which is hard to do, and we miss him, like, because he's a great character. It's a great performance. We miss Nolan North, the whole thing, right? But yeah, Sam was a great. If you had to have the cameo, have the other Drake brother in there. You know, listen, sometimes the younger brother's the better one. Not always. Don't get cocky over there.
Yeah. All right.
But you know what I mean? But I mean, if you had to have one, I like it. I like that, you know, I like the way his kind of arc plays in with these two characters as well, especially with Nadine. It's interesting. She's got real beef. It's legitimate beef. So that was fun. And they wait. There's restraint. He's not in from like the first quarter of the game. You know, it's an eventual thing. I think it's done pretty elegantly.
Oh, he's not in it for I would say 2/3 of the game.
Yeah. 2/3. Yeah, maybe even 3/4 might be too much. 2/3 would probably be more accurate. And I think it was done elegantly, and I didn't see it coming. You know, I'm an idiot when it comes to that kind of stuff. You know, I call it my fictional gaydar. Like I don't see it sometimes. You know, Helene's much better at that than me. Yeah, I talk about our grandpa growing up. He called all this shit up. Like, were you on the set? Like, what is happening? How is somebody so perceptive? But for me, it worked, you know, and again, very thoughtful. The whole game, I guess Uncharted is like this as a whole, but it's not it's not going to win a Pulitzer for writing, right? It's not a philosophical doctrine. It's not this super intellectual, complicated, complex storyline. But it's thoughtful. You know, every detail is lovingly done. The only bad thing I would say about Sam, and I love Troy Baker, I think he's great, but that character has a very kind of New York edge to him. You know, the way he walks, the way he talks, his kind of his bravado and everything. And I think with Nadine and Chloe throughout the game, and the characters that are woven in and out, but especially with those two, the conversation and the exchanges are so cool and never gets cheesy or cringy. He crosses over into cringy a couple of times for me, where it's like, oh, all right, you know what I mean? Where it's like, all right, he's being that dude type of thing. I don't know if it's Troy Baker's delivery or what it is. And this is overly critical because he's on the whole, he's pretty damn good. But you know, he's the one that's like, oh man, that was weird. You know, that was cheesy.
Sure.
That was forced. But other than that, you know, they make a nice trio. And that plays into your ending as well, which is cool.
Yeah. I was looking this up as you were talking because I wanted to make sure I had this right. Was the one thing that bothered me about the characters. Sam was fine. I've never really been huge into that. I have a really hard time receiving new characters when there are so many established characters. You know, it's just that I care about. That was what was so great about Uncharted 3 when it looked like they killed Sully and all that other stuff. So, and even they killed Drake, although we all know that didn't obviously happen, which is good. But Nate, so first of all, I'm not one of these people, as people know, I'm not like one of these people that's like, you got to have it all like racially the right way and all the rest. But it's like, why are two white women playing these characters? And then, you know, Claudia Black is white, and Laura Bailey's obviously white too.
Yeah. And
I have no problem with this. I remember this being a big thing because I think they might have cast Nadine and then changed their mind about what they were going to do with the character. And that's the beauty of it. And I'm not saying that. I'm saying it for one particular reason.
Okay.
I have no idea what Laura Bailey's doing with the accent with Nadine. Like, it's all over the place. It's, in my opinion, pretty bad.
Yeah.
I went and looked up. I'm like, where is Nadine even supposed to be from? Do you know?
It comes out in maybe it came out before this, but in this, she eventually says Australia, right?
No, it's South. I thought she was South African.
Like, oh, you did?
I think she is.
Oh, she's supposed to be South African in the. See, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
she does.
But she sounds Australian. Like, yeah, she sounds Australian sometimes. Sometimes it sounds like they're doing like almost a Russian, like weird. Dude, it's not good. Like, I don't. Sure. It's not very good. I noticed that and it was confusing and I just didn't understand. Yeah, I don't know if people talked about that at the time because I missed the whole critical reception cycle of this. I have no idea what people are saying about this game, but that stood out to me as like the only thing about the characterizations that bother me. I'm like, where? I went and looked, and then I found this thing.
Yeah.
On Reddit, and it's Uncharted, and it says, please don't ever think that Nadine is what South African sounds like. I'm South African, and I had no idea what accent she was trying to portray until I Googled it. We do not sound like this. Our voice actor is just really bad.
Diplomatic immunity. That's what I always think about when I think about South Africans. Right?
That's Lethal Weapon, right?
Lethal Weapon 2. Is that Lethal Weapon 2? Yeah. Yeah, dude. She wanders into a British inflection at times too. It gets very confusing. It gets confusing because you know Chloe's background, you know her origins and everything, but then with Nate, and you know what the thing with Nadine is that maybe it's that voice performance, not being overly critical, but that doesn't help the character when you have to stand up to a Chloe Fraser, right? And she's such a good character and you're getting into her and that we're getting more of her and we like her and we're rooting for her, you know? And you got to have this duo. You got to have this team up, this friendship, this budding friendship. And then, you know, the one's not holding up their end. Yeah. Yeah.
It stood out. It stood out to me. I noticed it. I hate being critical about that kind of stuff, but it did stick out to me to the point where I looked, because I was like, I have no idea where she's. I forget. They again do make it clear at some point, maybe in the fourth one, where she's from and where Shoreline, her kind of PMC, you know, is from, which is cool. And I like that they tied that in because I think Shoreline's probably one of the most interesting parts of Uncharted 4, actually. I love private militaries. I think they're so
it's interesting.
They're so interesting. Metal Gear obviously is heavily revolves around this, and a few other games and pieces of fiction that I like as well. So And I feel like there's some level of truth to that's the way the future will look, like corporate armies. Final Fantasy VII is about this too, by the way. Shinra's, the army of that world is Shinra's army, which is so interesting.
That's good shit.
So, yeah, that stood out to me a little bit. But otherwise, yeah, I thought the performances were great. Dude, one of the things that sticks out to me, and this is just pure Uncharted, and these are the things that happen when you're allowed to take your time and make great games, right? Is there are just, and I always talk about the little things, but I'm usually talking about the little things in design. What the little things in this game are all about are like the graphics, the movements, the animations. There are so many little things in the game where it's like seeing any of these in a normal game would be unusual. Even today, I was noting to Mike, I was playing, I was like, this game is old.
Yeah.
And it's still, and they made it quickly and it still looks better and plays better and I'm playing the PS5 version. You played on PC, I assume?
No, I played on PS. I played on PlayStation 4.
Oh, okay, cool. You played on PS4 or PS5?
I played on PS4. Yeah.
Oh, you played the PS4 version. So like, okay, interesting.
Yeah, not the remake.
Yeah, I played the PS5 version in there, and it is available on PC too, so people can play it there, which is cool. But the wet clothes, the water animations. There are these pools of this almost beautiful turquoise, sapphire, these different water like pools with lily pads on them. And you walk through them and you know how like water's fluid, the dynamics of water are so much more complicated than we realize, where you walk through them and you would think they would scatter, but actually they just kind of go back to where you were. Right. And it's just so beautiful. I was just walking around looking at these different things. There's this pool of water where there's a part of it where there are just bubbles coming up. And I'm like, what an unnecessary touch. Someone spent days of their life making those bubbles.
It's gorgeous.
And yeah, it's crazy. Just the level of detail where I imagine you make a static world, and to a lot of, I think, developers, it's like, all right, make the trees sway, a few birds flying, whatever. But they go so much more above and beyond that with sound design. Like I was really impressed with the sound design when you go behind one of the waterfalls. I was like, wow, this is really, it's all based on location and perspective and all of the rest. They do a lot of stuff that's just really hard. I play a lot of games, and
you do.
Naughty Dog is just way better at this than a lot of other developers. But here's the thing that's beautiful about these games. And this is what I'm afraid of when we get the new one, if they show this level of restraint, is that there is nothing to these games. Dude, that bracelet we were talking about is a huge revolution in giving you anything to equip in an Uncharted game. I noted that because I was like, wow, that's so interesting. That's even above and beyond the design philosophy of an Uncharted game, which is just to be a linear, generally. Uncharted 4 in this game break it a little bit, but generally, it is a linear point A to point B game, just with bigger maps.
Yeah.
And they don't try to do anything, right? They don't try to do upgrades for your weapons. No. They don't try to give you a skill tree. They don't give you an inventory. It's just like, they just don't give a fuck about any of that. And it's so pure and it's so good. And when you don't give players any of those extras to distract themselves with, and they only have to focus on the game, your game better be really good. And that's, I think, a bold, that's a choice. And it's actually easier to make a bloated game full of fucking systems than it is to be like, play this like a game, but watch it like a movie. And don't worry about, find treasures if you want, but otherwise just go from point A to point B, and we bet you're going to have a great time.
Yeah, it's enough.
Games don't do that anymore. Enough. They don't do that, dude.
No.
Like, games don't do that anymore. They haven't done that for generations, and that's a big thing that's stuck out to me too, was just and it makes me hope. It's like, dude, remember when we did Uncharted 4, I got upset because there were some choices in terms of dialogue. They didn't mean anything. But I was like, even that, I'm like, no,
you don't need it.
And I remember being a PlayStation experience when they revealed Uncharted 4 and they showed that they were going to do that, and people went crazy. And I'm like, why don't you get it? Like, don't you understand Uncharted? Leave it alone.
Right. There's a great, the quality and the confidence, and in leaving it lean and just being, this is what it is. You don't have to stuff everything in there. If you don't like this, then you'll like this. It's almost like a development panic. And Naughty Dog does the opposite. You're right, man. The TLC, the level of craft, it looks beautiful. The effects animation, the water, like you said, the light. It's funny that you mentioned the lily pads, because I was thinking at one point in one temple, there's the shallow water with the lily pads and the lichens and the moss growing. And the lily pads sort of undulate with the physics of how close you're walking, and then undulate in the water and then come to a rest. Very beautifully done, very naturally done. And one of those little details that just feels so right that you might not even notice it if you're not even paying attention. That's the thing. It's so beautifully done and so well realized that it doesn't even call attention to itself. That's the naturalism of it, and the beauty of it. And the way they also strategically make sure that you're playing, they're playing up the scenic sort of quality and the breathtaking sort of aura of everything, and like having Chloe stop and take a picture with her cell phone and stuff like that, of these vistas, these sort of panoramic views, these gorgeous views. It makes you feel like you were there. This game had a little less of like that white knuckle fear of heights thing that I love in a Uncharted game, where it really feels like you're up that high and you're in this precarious position and you could fall. Because I think it's so overwhelmingly beautiful, like you said, with the turquoise and the statues and the beautiful imagery. But it still has that thing. It felt this game had a decidedly less level of danger than the other games. But maybe, it's interesting what you say too, Kyle. I have to circle back to that, where it would have been cool if this was the first half of the game. You know what I mean? They maybe did it in 7 hours. And then you had another 7 in a completely different locale, where you do that jet setting thing of like, here's A and B is a dynamically different set piece, different part of the world, different dangers, maybe a different part of the antagonist, different stakes, that type of thing. But yeah, man, I mean, just like the loving amount of craft. I do wonder about that, because you play a lot more games than I do. So it's particularly high praise coming from you, Kyle, because you see what Naughty Dog does versus what AB and developer AB.
It's night and day, dude.
That's crazy.
Like
so cool.
Just the beginning part with Chloe in that marketplace in the city where she's bartering with the little girls. Like everything about this is really elite level gamecraft, from the voice acting between them and the performance capture to just the ambience and atmosphere. Now, again, knowing games and knowing these games, you see the seams. Like they did a lot of stuff with urban environments in Uncharted 4. They're going to reuse it, right? They did a lot of stuff with, whatever, trains or whatever, whatever. They're going to reuse this stuff. And the car and the sliding and all, like they're going to obviously reuse these things, but they're so good. Like watching Chloe push through a crowd is amazing. Now it's set up to be animated in a certain way. Naughty Dog does a lot of these touches. When we get to The Last of Us Part 2, eventually you'll see that there's a lot of them in that game too. And that's like where people can die in very specific ways, but you have to kind of set it up, right? And that's cool. And in this game, it's obvious that it's not as dynamic as it seems, but it feels dynamic and it plays like that. And when you play lots of different games, like a lot of our audience does, how can you not see that this is so much better? But it's not that others can't do this. It's that this costs a lot of money and it takes a lot of time. And really only flagships get to act like this in games. And it's funny, I was thinking about Amy Hennig had nothing to do with this game, but she was at the time working on a Star Wars game at EA that got canceled, but they did show a little bit of footage of it. And it showed like a Han Solo, like, I don't know if you remember or ever saw it, but it shows like a Han Solo character walking out of an almost a Tatooine-like building, with the arch door into like a little village or whatever. But as he's walking out, he puts his hand on like the side and like brushes it along and like walks out. And it's like, that's Amy Hennig, right? But then seeing it here, it's like, no, that's Naughty Dog,
I love that.
And maybe they learned it from her, and they probably did, of like these little touches matter. But when you examine the game very deeply, you see so much of it. Little, like if you're on steps or there's like a ledge, like Chloe will put her leg up on the next step and bend her leg.
Yes, I noticed this.
If you drive around crazy, you see Chloe playing with the shifter and Nadine holding on to the seat, right? And them reacting as opposed to like Grand Theft Auto, like bodies just bouncing, or even, which is fine, but like, or even not even reacting and just going along with the physics of the car. There's a lot of work done that you almost take for granted in this game. And that's the thing that I'm so glad that gamers are sophisticated enough to notice is like, no, this isn't good for goodness's sake. This is good for workmanship, right? Like there's just there are touches where people put a lot of time and effort into this and you'll probably never even see it or notice. But if it's removed, you would notice, you know?
Yeah. But and especially someone like you who's so dialed in and been there, done that, and been doing this for years, like you identify that money where your mouth is, level of development, that attention to detail. And you know what, man? This is just like a movie. It's a story about human beings. You want that, you know, shout out to the motion capture and the facial cap and the facial reference and shout out to the actors who are not just amazing voice actors. You know, I'm especially talking about somebody who like Claudia Black, who not only is it her level of acting, which is so beautifully realized with the nuance and the believability and, you know, just there's a level of something that's not artificial. There's a subtlety and you're not relying on convention. You know what I mean? It really feels like she's enveloping that character. And then for the developers and the animators and the visual staff to take that and translate it to the final product is just unbelievable. That's something that as an animator, I identify as like this acting and the way they're putting this acting on the screen is incredible. You don't see things like that. And this is 7 years old almost. You know what I mean? That's the thing, especially in this age of rapid evolution where it's like, you know, it's like talking about dog years. Like it's only been 7 years, but in technology, it's like 30, you know, that it's still like one of the best things I've seen. It really is. It's unbelievable. It's a joy to behold. And it's immersive. That's the other thing. Like you want to live in I wanted to be in this world. I was sorry for the game to end. You know,
yeah,
just like the other Uncharted games.
I could have used more too. Like it did keep going, which was cool for a while. I thought it ended a couple of times, and then it kept going, which was cool. So I was happy for that because I beat it after midnight last night. So not too long before you did.
Yeah,
and one of the positives I think of having a truncated Uncharted story, we lose the globetrotting in the sense of scale, but we do gain a sort of character intimacy. Like there aren't any characters in this game.
No,
it's like it's Chloe and Nadine. It's what's that guy's name? Asav, the bad guy.
Yeah.
There's Orca, who's the guy who's in Uncharted 4. Really quick note is the guy who does that voice is Biggs in Final Fantasy VII Remake. In case anyone.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Who is that? Gideon Emery?
Yeah, that's right. And then there's like the little girl, and that's basically
the little girl. That's right.
Right. I mean, and Sam. So there's
Sam.
5,
Eventually.
maybe 6 characters in the entire game, which is pretty cool because I do like more focused character adventure like that. And it doesn't give you a chance to introduce a MacGuffin or like a secondary villain or the real villain or another group and a rival and all the different things that Uncharted games have, which are so fun and really enjoyable. And I especially like the Sav because there's something really cool about this game through that character and through his intent felt geopolitical for the first time in an Uncharted game. Like you have real danger in the other game. Like Lazarevich at the end of the second one is obviously going to become like a crazy warlord, right? If he wins.
Yeah.
But this is the one where it's like, wow, there's a real present danger actually right now to the world. It's not the ship getting taken away or whatever, or it's some horrible thing, or that you're losing the treasure and getting chased around. As far as I understand, that's really the first time that that's ever happened in an Uncharted game where it's like, wow, we have to stop something horrible happening imminently, like right now, not in the near future or never, if it's just about a treasure hunt. And I thought that was pretty cool. And I liked how it played into, and this is what I was saying earlier about my own ignorance of Indian history, but really being tuned into it just a little bit more recently, the timing is very good because I'm like, oh, like there is a history here of civil war, separatism, interfaith strife, and all of the rest. And it's like, okay, so this guy is part of a tradition of this stuff happening in this region since the British came in, and kind of very much like what happened with Africa, kind of making the lines unnatural and groups that don't really belong together or want to be together and all of the rest, and how that's kind of come apart. So I really liked how this dude was basically trying he was procuring a bomb to detonate and kill a bunch of people to set off a conflict. And I'm like, wow, that's a pretty serious Uncharted game. That's Uncharted games usually aren't again, Uncharted 2 would be a great example of like it is implied what will happen or what you think might happen if things go a different way, but it's never really about that. And so that stood out to me. I don't know if that stood out to you too. It's about this game is, in other words, about something different. I don't think I wanted a real Uncharted game to be about this, but this was a cool little aside that I thought fit in with something that was otherwise different, from length to character to whatever. Why not make it about something different and just embrace the entire notion of doing something a little off the beaten path?
That's a great point, man. I'm not even sure I really thought about it like that, because usually they're up against some would-be treasure hunter, whether that, antagonist wants the treasure for profit or they're trying to procure some Nazi relic for power or something. Usually it's that type of thing. And again, that harkens back to the old Indiana Jones model, right? But this is different. This guy's just, trying to ignite a civil war, essentially. His goals are purely political. So that is a different kind of enemy. I mean, I thought about this character is interesting for a couple of reasons. And I didn't know if I was getting too deep on it or overthinking it in some way, but I mean, we already know Uncharted isn't known for its unforgettable villains in terms of like you're going to create these colorful bad guys like Kojima does in Metal Gear, right? Maybe Lazarevich is the closest we ever got to that in Uncharted, but they're more believable. The villains are usually more believable. And that's with this kind of thing. The first thing I thought about with this guy was, I don't know, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Kyle. The audience could do the same, but I don't think we get a great many Indian villains in our Western fiction. I can't think of that many. Can't even think of any right now, although I guess if I think long enough, I'll think of one or two. Yeah,
I can't think of any, but I maybe there's one. Yeah, but it's obviously not a common.
That's not a common thing, which is interesting in and of itself. But he's got, I mean, first of all, he's got this, which they mentioned early on, how handsome he is. He's got this kind of maybe like Bradley Cooper type, but buff, but he's Indian type thing going on. And I'm sure there's like a Bollywood equivalent of this, like a famous Bollywood actor type of thing, but I'm out of the loop on that. And I like that they mentioned that a lot of his look and demeanor is said to be intentional in order to, create a diversion from his deadly nature and his fighting prowess. You know what I mean? Like he's trying, and his background as a doctor, he's trying to look low key. He's trying to look non-threatening. And that's part of his whole thing, which I thought was interesting. You don't see that a lot in a character. Usually they make them, they'll dress him up and make him look like the stereotypical bad guy with the twirly mustache and wearing all black and that type of thing, or be big, with cybernetic gun arm implants and shit like that. But this guy was, purposely trying to not look the part, of this, I guess he's a warlord, really, is what he is, but he doesn't look like one, which is kind of interesting. Again, low key, he's got the glasses, he's well dressed. You could see like he had a past life as a physician of some kind, but he's got this political bent that he believes in. I'm not saying he's sympathetic. Again, he's not really that fleshed out, which I think is, now we're far enough along in Uncharted where that's kind of a common thing. They don't dwell on the enemies that much. They're an enemy. You're racing against something. But yeah, there's some texture there. Is he as interesting as Chloe? No, but I don't know. Maybe that, again, that's maybe that's intentional. Let the main character shine. Even when it comes down to Nadine. I mean, Chloe really just stands out as the superstar like Nathan normally does. And the rest kind of fall at some point, at different levels underneath her for me. But yeah, I was blown away by this character. I would love to, we were kind of conjecturing about the next mainline installment of Uncharted with Cassie, and maybe her dad's the mentor and calling the shots from afar, or becoming like the dispatcher, or, going to, he's in touch via phone on her adventure. But I could see Chloe as that too, Then if you have that love triangle, of Elena, Chloe, and Nate, you have this trifecta, this understanding between Chloe and Elena, which I guess is already established. Chloe kind of backed out of her own accord because she knew Nate was in love with, Elena, that type of thing. But that could be interesting too. I just want to see her. She's almost like Sully level for me now. It's like, wow, I really kind of fell in love with this character. They gave her more, they fleshed her out in a good way.
Yeah. I wonder, I don't remember the ins and outs as much as I should anymore. I mean, I've played all the Uncharted games several times now, but is it ever explicitly said that Elena knows about, like, she probably assumes about like what happened with Nate and Chloe, but does she know for sure? Which would be,
I think those two, am I mistaken? They had a past. Chloe and Nate had a past before Elena was even on the scene.
No, they did. But what I'm saying is no. Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think. Oh, so you're saying before Elena and Drake meet in Drake's Fortune, Chloe had already known. Yeah.
I think those two already have had some kind of history of
that might be true.
Flings.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I liked about the Asav character is actually how they just dealt with. I thought they dealt very realistically with having two female leads fighting him, where they kind of had to fight him together. I dug that. It didn't feel like Mary Sue, whatever, or like Rey Skywalker kind of nonsense. It's like, no, they would have no matter how talented they can beat the shit out of people, especially Nadine. You're probably gonna have a bit of a hard time with a dude who knows what he's doing, just based on size and the nature of men and women. So I like that they dealt with that, and I thought it was kind of cool how you attacked him together and tried to like distract him while the other person did their thing or whatever. And this gets into what I wanted to say about the ending, which I thought, or the end sequence, I was like, the car chase to the train to the car swing. I'm like, this is insanely good. This is so good. And it's so complicated. It's really, really amazing how, again, it's all semi-scripted in some sense, but you have to get from point A to point B, and you can die in all sorts of different ways. But it's just so good, dude. Like I was remarking, I usually don't say anything out loud. I'm like, wow, this is so fun. Like this is, as she's like L1 swinging into the next train and then jumping into a car.
It's so good.
And driving forward and then swinging out of the car. It's like really incredible stuff, man. It requires obviously deep suspension of disbelief, but we know that as Uncharted fans or whatever, that you just need to deal with like the incredible violence, the ridiculous nature of what's happening, the injuries, the climbing, like none of it makes any sense really. So if you can just remove yourself from that and have fun with it and enjoy it for what it is, that is really one of the great Uncharted moments, I think, in any of the games, and was a hell of an ending, I thought. What did you think of that moment?
It's funny you say that about the action and the level of violence. And we talked and we've laughed about that in the past. But what's funny, though? It's the tone that makes it so enjoyable. You don't see limbs flying. You don't see burnt legs flying in the air from the guy who just took out on the motorcycle. You don't see blood spattering everywhere. It's got that very above board Spielberg Indiana Jones thing going on, which makes it just fun. It's popcorn, right? Which is cool. But the train, that sequence, man, I mean, you're playing it and you're enjoying it and you're immersed and you're almost taking it for granted. Then you think back and you're trying to deconstruct it and you're like, oh my God, like the way they curated this experience, that designed this sequence to be so crazy, but 100% coherent at every beat. Like, exactly where to go and what to do and that being said, in that it's as fast paced as it is insane to design something that beautifully done. That not only that fun, but to design that sequence to play out over whatever it plays out at 15 minutes or something. And they make it so good. But you know what, man, a chill ran down my spine. Forgive me for asking this. What game is it with the epic train scene? Is that 2?
2, yeah.
Okay. And that's the way it starts.
Mm-hmm.
Like, with that, no pun, cliffhanger. And I don't remember if it's the penultimate or the last chapter in this, because I love the title things. You know, that you get a vista, it's very strategic. You get the title and the number and the title of the chapter, and you see the train in the distance. I was like, oh shit. Because, you know, you just see it across the way, you know, you're still miles away from it. And you're like, oh my God, this is going to be a train sequence. And they announce it just visually, like, all right, get ready. Here we go. We're going back to the train thing. And, you know, that was such a loving nod. And it was like one of those video game moments for me. I think that will, you know, I'll retain for a long time. Where it's like, oh my God, you know, it's going to happen again. This is amazing. And yeah, it was an incredible payoff because I know I'm one of those crazy people and we always say I should play more, especially third person shooters, but I love the action sequences in these games. And there wasn't enough of it in this game for me. They were too short. They were too spread out. There wasn't enough meat there for me because I love the action in these games. I love it so much. I love the stealth too, which this game seemed to purposely keep you away from doing, you know? And again, that could have been bandwidth. You don't get the silenced pistol until like the second to last battle or something. As far as the way I experienced it. But there was something in the payoff of that last train battle. It was like, oh, this is what I was waiting for. And so you do get it before credits roll. So that was cool. And again, you know, you're that far in. The only downside is that you know it's going to be over soon. You know, because how can it get any better than this? You know, that's what the next game just needs this to be. It needs to be this, but like 3 times as long. My God, I could never get tired of it.
Yeah, I think it's gonna. I mean, I'm sure it's not being made at Naughty Dog, I don't think, but but they're cooking with that because they basically admitted that another studio is making it and that they're kind of helping shepherd it, and things won't happen without them. So I believe that whatever we get will live up to that quality, or that's my hope anyway. There were a few cool gameplay touches. You had brought up the silenced pistol. I found one earlier in the game, but I found it in one of the lock boxes. I thought the lock picking was a really cool addition. Again, nothing too crazy. It was especially fun at the end in the helicopter scene when you have to destroy the helicopter with the RPGs. They say you could use C4 to do it too, but I didn't even bother trying to do that. And it was fun, like unlocking them as you're under gunfire and like the pressure of the situation, extracting things out of the box. I thought that was a pretty nice addition. And I did like that helicopter scene a lot too. I thought it was pretty fun. The gunplay is really fun in Uncharted. They've really refined it, or really had refined it to that point. I always thought it was fun, but it definitely got stronger and stronger, and they learned from The Last of Us and other things with Uncharted 4. So you were saying that there wasn't enough of the kind of the adventure sequences, but for me, there wasn't really enough of anything. I mean, it goes to the quality of what we expect out of Uncharted, where I would have liked more gunplay too. I thought that they might have cut some things out too. I could be crazy, but there's in that big map in the open world, there's like that area in the center, and like nothing happens there.
No.
And
the tower?
Right.
Yeah.
Like I went there a couple times assuming that's where I needed to go next, and like nothing ever happened, but it's clearly constructed for gunfights. And I was like, am I crazy? Did I like forget that something happened here? And maybe I did. Maybe I totally just spaced out. But you could see that maybe they didn't get as much in as they wanted to, which happens from time to time. I could have used more gunfights. I really enjoy them. I also like the stealth. I mean, the stealth obviously is an introduction. Stealth is introduced really in Uncharted 2, but the way we understand it in cover is Uncharted 4, obviously. And there are some pretty cool sequences where you can get through. I got a trophy unintentionally for getting through an entire sequence without being seen.
Oh, wow.
And you can do it that way by just going around snapping necks. And it's helpful to have the silenced pistol and the couple times that you might be able to find it for that as well. So yeah, there were cool, nice additions. Like the aerial combat was cool. Like I said, with the helicopter, the lockpicking was pretty nice, and so on and so forth. Driving sequences were fun. Driving in the game is funny because again, it's arcadey. Like you're just driving this thing off of like a waterfall down 50 feet.
Fun.
But it's fun. It's like, whatever, dude. I'm not gonna.
You get away with murder with that Jeep.
You do.
You're going down things, waterfalls that you'd never you're like, I'm gonna die, and you don't.
Yeah, like I said it to Michael once when she was watching. I was like, I'm driving up this river with the water coming towards me, and I'm like, would this even be possible? Like, is this truck able to? And then later on, I got out of the truck and just started walking up the water, and I'm like, man, Nadine is fucking strong, huh? Chloe is got thighs of steel, I guess, to be able to stand up in this work. So like salmon going upstream. So
yeah, that open world Jeep map was fun.
Mhm.
That was the driving is really fun. It is very video gamey. It's enjoyable. You know what the one thing that I didn't like about that whole sequence, and you're spoiled because the game is so fluid and it's so Johnny on the spot and responsive, but the map, when you had to toggle to the map button during those Jeep sequences, during that giant map sequence, there was just almost like a loading screen level delay in toggling the map on and off. That was really a shitty interruption in a game that otherwise almost felt flawless.
It's annoying. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
That was a bit much. And at first I thought it was my internet. And I was like, wait, what is, or, just the game, like, lagging, as an anomaly, but it wasn't. It was like a regular thing. That was it. And the only other thing I don't know why they don't fix, and I don't know if it bothers anybody else, is that damned invisible gun sight aiming reticle. It's just, it gets lost for me in the heat of the battle. Just make it a fucking different color. Why is it white?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
I wonder if Naughty Dog loves deep settings, and I wonder if that is one of the settings to do anything with that.
You know what? Now that I'm talking about it like an idiot, it probably is a setting.
It may or may not be. I don't know. But if it's anyone does that, it would be them, because they really helped pioneer like the idea of like granular,
really
settings.
Customizing.
Yeah,
ultra customizing.
Yeah, to what I would consider an unnecessary degree, but nonetheless,
yeah, that bothers me. But I never hear anybody say. And the only other thing about this game, I think the grenades suck, but I'm starting to think that's a me thing with Uncharted.
I barely used them. The C4 was dope.
C4 was fun. C4 was
fucking
fun.
Destroyed, just ruining people's lives with that thing, man. that was another new addition, like a small new addition, is like having a detonative, like when the truck's rolling around, you have to destroy it with that. I thought that was kind of cool. Well, shades like of what was the Uncharted game with the tank? That was Uncharted 2, I think, too.
Yeah, I want to say
where you have to you're like running alongside the tank. That was a really cool sequence, and the tank's like going through the town, and you have to like keep avoiding it.
That was like Private Ryan with the sticky bombs.
I just thought I get annoyed when people say that the gunplay is not great in Uncharted. I'm like, I think the gunplay is really, really good in Uncharted.
So much fun with it.
It's as pulpy and arcadey as the game is. It's not really a serious game. You're not playing Sniper Elite 5. Like, what the fuck do you think you're playing here? Where like you have to measure the trajectory, like where the bullet goes down as it goes like further, and you have to like aim like a foot above the guy's head. It's like, come on, man.
Oh, I don't have the skill for that.
I played one of those once, and I thought I was going to kill myself. I was like, this sucks. Didn't want to play that at all. Anyway.
You want to be the video game.
Yeah, like I thought. Intellectually, it sounds great.
Yeah.
In execution, no.
It's not as fun.
No.
If you're coming from that, you're really kind of slumming it, I guess, in an Uncharted game. But yeah, but for us, I mean, for me, it's so fun. The only thing is, there was a couple, maybe one, maybe not even a couple. There was one shoehorned sequence with the elephant ride where I was like, what the fuck is that? Like, what is happening? And then you realize it's for exposition. They're just having a little character moment between Chloe and Nadine at that point, and they need to slow it down and sort of curate an experience where you get the dialogue in.
I like the little elephant rescue though.
You did? It felt weird. It felt misplaced. Like, what are we doing all of a sudden?
I think it's pacing. Yeah, it's like pacing. Like you said, it's for exposition, but I think that it's like the open world map. It's like, I think they just need things to slow you down, either explicitly or it's implied that you should slow down. And this is one of those explicit, like, you will slow down moments. The one thing that fell short for me here though was, and I don't know, maybe this is a little reductive, but we had the giraffe moment in The Last of Us. Like,
yes,
this is somewhat inspired by that, maybe, but we don't need the cute animal interaction thing in Uncharted. It was a nice scene. I really liked it. I wrote in my notes, I was like, that's cute. The problem with that scene is that it allows them to resolve their tension way too soon. But this is the nature of having a really short game. Like, they're mad at each other, and like Sam Drake appears, Nadine's mad at Chloe, and it's resolved literally 5 minutes.
Yeah, she storms off and then meets her in the next area, and they're fighting shoulder to shoulder.
In a game, you wouldn't see her for an entire act, like a full game. You
would really have to, stretch it out to the players. Like, is she coming back?
Right. It's almost the game is almost in real time. in some sense. In fact, Chloe says it's like it's been a crazy couple of days. So it's not quite real time, but it's much more truncated than a usual game where you could imagine they might not have even slept or anything like that from the moment you play as them to the moment they're out.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, Colin. Yeah, it does feel much more real-timey front to back, A to Z than most games. You know, what you do with the elephant scene is you have the combat. You have the combat scene on the elephant running along the train.
You have to use
motorcycles.
Yeah, you have to use an RPG to blow the elephant up.
Can I just say the RPG, like that's a boy, you know, as a Gen Xer who grew up in the 70s and 80s, like that's a boyhood fantasy that harkens back
to the
like
Soviet,
Rambo.
the Soviet Mujahideen or whatever, you know, shooting
and
down
I love
airliners.
That it's so precious. It's made by Gen Xers. Like you get the one rocket propelled grenade, you know, it's like, that's the precious moment because all Gen Xers were waiting for that. That's what you were talking about in the beginning of the show before we started talking about Uncharted with guns. Like I think if you grew up and you're our age, you're a Gen X or millennial, and you grew up with typical boy things, G.I. Joe and Star Wars, there's always, like, I don't like guns, you know, in real life. Like they kind of scare me. I'm not really a big gun nut. But there's always that little bit of like boyhood fascination with guns that just goes back to being a kid and being into that stuff. You know, I guess it's like when you're into it in that innocent way of like, it's cool and Han Solo's your hero. Indiana Jones whips the gun out and shoots the swordman. You know what I mean? Like it's that type of thing. And you get that's what a fun game like this does to me. It kind of brings back that again, you said it earlier, it's that purity, you know, it's that purity of just something that's enjoyable and fun. And I think that's what you get. That's what you come to Uncharted for. You know, it's the spectacle, it's the adventure, it's that white knuckle ride, it's that heart in your throat, heights. Again, I think I could have used a little more of that in this game, but it's that fast paced and that grand adventure. And they do a great thing. Not even with story misdirection, but like gameplay misdirection. Like in the beginning, they start to establish the thing where you're going to use the carts to sort of address climbing to greater heights. And then you take the one cart and you push it off the floor and it crashes through the floor. And now you're going 3 floors lower than you were. You know what I mean? It's that 1 step forward, 2 step back thing that makes a game fun like this. You know, it's very real. It's very clever. It's, you know, it's always kind of defying your expectations. And again, in small ways, small, thoughtful ways. It could be done a lot less lovingly. You know, it makes you smile as you're playing it. You know, that this game had me like smiling and laughing out loud when it really wasn't supposed to be funny. It was me having joy. You know what I mean? Not every game does that. You know, it's just a joyful experience and they want you to feel that. You know, they want you to pay attention to those things. So you feel happy playing it, you know? I'm waiting for the next. I'm happy to hear that one Uncharted game is really good, that Golden Abyss game, because
I think it's great.
I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, it's a really solid game. It takes place before, it's not the earliest Uncharted we see because we have throwbacks in 3 and 4 to their childhood. So it takes place after that, but before Drake's Fortune, Sully, and so it actually takes place before the movie. No, it takes place, if the movie would count, it takes place after the movie because
okay.
But I think the movie's like a different continuity entirely, so I don't know if that really matters. But yeah, it's really, I'm surprised that there's a lot of very bespoke Vita shit on it that they would need to edit out, and that's going to take time. It's not just a simple port, but it is surprising that they haven't done that, because I feel like you could just sell a few 100,000 copies at least digitally if you just if you made that available, because it is a missing piece of the puzzle. But I don't think Naughty Dog might not even give a shit about it. It might be very similar to the way that Batman Arkham Origins game is treated. Like it was Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, and then Arkham Origins, but it wasn't made by Rocksteady, and no one considers it like a real Batman game really. And I used to say, because I kind of felt bad for them, because when Arkham Knight came out, it's like the conclusion of the Arkham trilogy. I'm like, it's the 4th Arkham game. What are you talking about? You know, it's really the 5th Arkham game, because there was that Vita and 3DS version too.
That's kind of sad though.
Yeah, I think it's kind of sad too, actually.
That's sad.
Yeah. But The only other thing I have to say about the game, and I have a few general things I want to say about it, but specifically is just I thought some of the puzzles were cool. Other than that light puzzle, I didn't look up any solutions. So there was really nothing to look up in the game. I did like that those platform puzzles that I said earlier, where the different statues would swing their weapons or whatever.
That's true. You know what? I take that back. You are harmed like an Aztec temple. There are those puzzles. It's two specific ones, right? Where you don't get killed, but you definitely get injured.
Right. Because you get knocked off and have to
those.
go back up, I think, right? And try again or whatever it is.
Right.
And it might, if you play it on hard or crushing, it might be that you get killed. But I liked how you could read the statues, like their chest would light up and stuff like that. And it wasn't very complicated. That was very manageable Colin puzzle. Like I had no problem doing that. The other puzzles in the game that I thought were a little more frustrating were the circular image puzzles, just because I'm like, I don't really, I would always get them obviously eventually, but it's like, I don't really get exactly what I'm even doing half the time. And then suddenly it'll just look right. And I'm like, oh,
lucky.
You know, like,
that whole bracelet quest was those puzzles, right?
No, that was like a series of different things. Like some of them were literally just like Zelda type explodable walls that you would blow up with a grenade and get a coin.
I want to go back and do that.
You're not missing it. There's really nothing to the exposition. It's literally just getting that item that makes it helpful to get treasures. And again, I think that was so revolutionary and interesting. That's an extra piece where you're like, oh, be careful. Yeah. We don't want things that you can turn on and off. That's too many systems, you know. I even just love that there's like, they even the golden weapons were cool too. Yeah. I don't know if those were in Uncharted 4. Those are definitely not in the Uncharted trilogy. That might even come from the online games or the online components of the games. Because there's a really fun, I played it. I don't think I even played the Uncharted 4 one, but Uncharted 2 and 3 both had fun, like almost horde mode type, like enemy wave things. And I think the game is actually really fun in combat, so that I would like to maybe go check that out, but I don't think the PS5 version has the online functionality at all, so it doesn't matter. The only other thing I wanted to say, Dig, about the games generally were, and again, you had brought it up earlier, we brought up the violence and all that earlier. It was just like, it's really insane. Like, I was thinking of two things, two perspectives this time around. We always think of these funny random things. The first, I was just thinking about the henchmen. Like, what are these guys doing? Like, what do they think about this? What is happening? They're so eager to throw their lives away for this. It's kind of crazy. And I loved thinking about that perspective. And then, so I had to give a shout out to the henchmen, but then I also just had to give a shout out to the sheer level of violence in the game. And I remember you and I laughed about this with one of the Uncharted games we did, where it was like just the sheer disregard for antiquities. Like the absolute disregard for they're like escaping these things that are collapsing in and on themselves and all that have somehow remained hidden from the air all this time. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And it's just like all of this. It's like ISIS going to the museums in fucking Iraq with sledgehammers, right? It's like, what are you guys doing? And at the end, they kind of do speak to that, because they end up kind of implying that they're going to give it away, right? Or that and so the horn or whatever, which is cool. And I'm not one of these people that's like the fuck the British Museum and all that. I do think that a lot of like treasure hunters over the last 200 years have actually done a great deal to protect these things, even if they're not in their native countries, and that we should be thankful for that. But it is funny, the flagrant post Indiana Jones disregard of antiquities, throwing grenades and C4 RPGs. It's like fucking, it's insane. Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, so that's what I was thinking of when I was
playing. China shop, dude. Yeah, it's the exact opposite of Indiana Jones. You know. And it's also the exact opposite of Indiana Jones if it belongs in a museum. I love that the whole thing is to Sam's chagrin in the ending and stuff. You know what? I wanted that tusk though, because I love the Hinduism imagery and the deities and the illustrations and the statues, and there's just something so ancient and so awesome about the whole thing. Again, that a lot of it eludes me in real life. I don't know much about it, but I feel like that tusk should have been huge. You know, if that's like, what's his name? Ganesh, that's his tusk that got excised, that got lopped off. You know what I mean? I kind of wanted that thing to be massive. I love that it was like that turquoise blue, gorgeous color. And I love just everything about like all the visual cues of like that entire that entire region and that entire religion is something so beautiful and so Eastern, so specifically Eastern. That's just so neat. And I love that the game kind of hinged, a lot of the sort of visual aspects of the game hinged on that. That was really cool. And it makes me want to learn more about Hinduism. I mean, this country went through a big fascination with that stuff. The hippies in the 60s, with the sitar, and, the Beatles went through their whole thing.
You see some of that in Mad Men.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. 60s. I don't know what it was, but like we awakened to that stuff in the 60s, which you would think it would have come earlier, like by World War II, but it really, the fascination just wasn't there yet.
Yeah. Like I think a lot of it comes from the passive resistance that Indians showed the British, at least at some point, that inspired the anti-war movement. There's probably some connection between those. I don't really know. This is just a place that I don't know,
Yeah.
Which is a shame. I mean, it's a very different society than ours, but there's so many people there. Like it's worth knowing it just for the sheer population density of it. It's so much more populous than the United States and has a massive cultural influence of its own. And I know I'm good friends with a couple of Indian, like Americans, like their parents are from India, and both the wives of friends of mine actually. And that I went to college with one and knew after college with the other. And yeah, they're like, I've only been exposed to, like, it's funny. One of them is more true to form, doesn't eat like beef and that sort of thing. The other is like family has been like thoroughly westernized. The one that doesn't eat beef, actually, I went to their wedding in Virginia here, but it was many years ago, and they had a 2-day Indian wedding. That was probably the most
traditional wedding
exposed to that world I've ever been.
That's so cool. Yeah, I've never been to a traditional Indian wedding, but there's a lot. The kids are friends with quite a few Indian kids, but I've never been to anything. And it's one of them specifically. The wife could cook, dude. The food that she makes will put any Indian restaurant to shame. It really will. But yeah, man, I'm fascinated with that part of the world. And Hinduism, I don't know, then I'm sorry to make it a competition, but they just got it over Catholicism with the whole thing. The imagery, the amount of deities, the ones specifically for this, how ancient it is, how deep it runs. I mean, nothing against Catholicism or any other religion, but Hinduism is just super interesting. Just for the imagery. It's so neat. And I love that the game hung it. The only other thing that, I'm glad they circled back to at the end of the game is the little girl, in the village. That was a good Chloe thing in the beginning. Her interaction with the little girl in the bazaar or whatever, it shows, again, the character growth of Chloe from what we knew her as. She obviously has empathy. You see her dealing with this little girl. But what was cool is I think she saw like a young Chloe in the little girl. Like she identified the hustler. You know what I mean? She identified like this little girl who was kind of like a survivor. I think she saw a little bit of herself in that girl. So that was cool. That was another character building thing for Chloe that I thought was really neat. But Kyle, I got to ask you, that pizza at the end, what was going on with that? It looked like, I was going to say Papa John's, but it looked like a bigger nightmare than Papa John's.
You fucking when in Rome, my friend, like, what are you going to do? You can't
give me some chicken tikka masala. Give me some samosa. You know what I mean? Like, let's have.
Yeah, but it's not special to the little girl, probably.
That's true.
But yeah, fair enough. It didn't look. It didn't look great. But we're many, many thousands of miles away from where you're going to get a good slice of pizza, probably where you are there. So you have to kind of make do.
At least we could identify it as pizza.
When in Rome, you got to eat your DiGiorno, whatever the hell it was they were having there. I do like, though, on the splash screen, or not the splash screen, the start screen, it's like the boat, the interior of the boat. And after you beat the game, there's like an empty pizza box on the boat, which is pretty cool.
I don't think I saw that. Yeah. How did I miss that?
Yeah.
What?
Pretty cool.
Oh, I want to go back and see that.
Yeah, that was a nice touch.
You know what was? You know what was spoiled for me, oddly, but I didn't identify it as this thing, as the Lost of Legacy specifically, was the ending. The ending credits with the really chibi, cartoony versions of the characters. I had seen that in passing, probably in YouTube thumbnails that were just coming up in my feed. And then when I got to it, I was like, oh my God, that's the ending for this game. Because I knew it was something that rolled over credits. And I didn't know it was this specifically. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh my God, I could have done these. You know what I mean? Super cute, like Mary Blair, Small World versions of. I thought it was especially cute to see the villain in that form. That was really fun.
Yeah.
And kind of a weird choice. Like, where did that? It doesn't really play in to anything in the game that I could identify. It's not like she was reading a children's book with the little girl and then that was the illustration style in the book. You know what I mean? It didn't really tie into anything. It was a weird choice, but it was something kind of neat, you know?
Yeah.
And it's not even very 2017. I feel like that stuff was already passe, but because Pixar would do that in the 90s, they would, you know, hire an art director just for the credits and it would be a whole different thing. I feel like we were already past that. So that was kind of neat.
Yeah, it was cool. I was frustrated that you couldn't seem to skip the credits because I wanted to see if there was anything after them. And I was like, this is a little excessive, but you don't get anything.
You got the mid-credit sequence.
Right. Which is like really not even the mid-credit. It's like very early. It's like after the major players are shown, then they show that credit. Yeah, because I was like, damn, dude, I don't mind forcing people to watch the credits or whatever, but just let me fast forward them. Because I do like to read them. I know some of these people and I like to see if I like to see if I recognize names, and I often do, and see where people are and all that. So, although this is a little older, so it's not useful to me in the current. But is there anything else to say, Dig, about Uncharted: The Lost Legacy?
I think we summed it up, man. If you guys haven't played this one, please. I really enjoyed it. You know what I'm thinking though? The whole time I'm thinking this, we're having this conversation. Where do we go on Knockback with video games specifically from here? We have a list of Knockback topics that we want to tackle. And in that list is films, books, TV series, things we want to readdress that we've already done, some personal topics. And there are video games in that list as well. But I'm thinking if like Johnny on the spot, I'm putting you up, you know, feet to the fire. What's the next game we're going to do? What's one that's really kind of in the offing that makes sense for us?
It depends really on your own ability to have time to play. Because I mean, I think there are some obvious ones that we would want to get into, especially if they were to be made available again. For instance, like there are pretty heavy rumors that Fallout 3 will eventually be re-released, you know, and that's such a seminal and important game. I mean, that game changed my entire concept of what video games could be. I mean, it really did. And I'd never played anything like that game before. And obviously it's very passe and old now, but I think it would still be really special to experience. I also think like Mass Effect 2, we haven't done. We did Mass Effect 1 in 2020, so it's been a long time. I would actually probably replay Mass Effect 1 before I played Mass Effect 2 at this point. So that would be a little bit of a time sink, especially because when we played it, it was only available in the PlayStation ecosystem on PS3, so I played it there. It has since been released on PS4, and I would probably want to just begin and play at 60 frames there or whatever. So Mass Effect 2 would be one that we can get into as well. We have to continue Halo. We can begin Gears. There are Zelda games to do.
Yeah, there
are a lot. Yeah, so, but Johnny on the spot, I would say like Mass Effect 2 probably would be like the most accessible of those that we would want to do.
Yeah, and you have mentioned that one before. Fallout 3, I didn't realize it was 2008. So that's time-wise, that's ripe for the picking for Knockback.
Oh yeah, totally. And Mass Effect 2 is just a year older, or a year younger rather. So
okay, so wow, yeah, those are perfect wheelhouse for us. All right, yeah, I was curious about that, and it's good for the people to know that are listening to the old KB.
Yeah, it's really just up to your. I don't want to give you time sink things, but we should work in a game every month or so if we could.
I enjoy the hell out of it. I really love it. I miss it when I'm not doing it. It keeps me, and I feel like it keeps me honest. You know what I mean? It's like going back to those worlds that I enjoy, but you kind of forget. The days go so fast. The time's flying out the window. You know, it's like let's get back to a game and just enjoy that. Everybody goes to bed. Everybody goes to bed so early in this house. There's built-in time for it. You know?
Yeah, that's so crazy. I can't go to bed before like 3 o'clock. It's not possible.
I can't either. It's not good.
All right, Dave, let's end with a dad joke before we.
All right. I got one all queued up. You'll be proud of me this time.
All right.
I don't think we've done this one before. How did the police finally stop the paint thief?
I don't know.
They caught him red-handed.
Yeah, that's pretty good. It's okay.
It's not bad. There's 60 dad jokes in this box. I'm wondering. No, you know what? I think we would have gotten through these all if we didn't start going on a bi-weekly basis. But I think we probably still have ones in here that we haven't done.
All right. Well, hopefully.
It might be harder to find.
Yeah. Well,
but
make sure to vet them.
Yes. As best we can.
All right, Dave. Well, it was good to see you. Good to catch up with you.
Yeah, it was fun.
Thanks for taking the time. We'll see you again on this show in a couple of weeks, but you're still on Constellation every week, and
yes,
everything's going well with your new job. So congratulations on that.
Thank you, my friend. Yeah, everything's going as good as it can be. Yeah.
All right. Excellent. Yeah. All right, my friends. Well, thanks again, Dig. Thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support. Appreciate you. Patreon.com/LastDayMedia for early ad-free access and LastDayMedia.store for merch if you want to check that stuff out. Couldn't do it without you. We'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye. Knockback, a retro and nostalgia podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC, and is recorded from Central Virginia and the Philadelphia suburbs, USA. The show was conceived by and is produced by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is Dagan Moriarty. Knockback's executive producer is Dustin Furman, and the show is edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's shows, including Knockback, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer support level or higher on Patreon, and we're grateful for your kindness and generosity.